Thank you so much, Ndishishi. Thank you, Dapewa. Thank you, Team Studio 2, under the captainship of Mr. Penda Gustav, for holding the fort, keeping it real from headquarters. Top of the morning to you, Namibia, on this gift of a Wednesday, the 4th day of September 2024. It's a pleasure. It's such an immense delight. It's a huge honor to be in your company. My name is Den Kisting. We're also coming to you live here from the Namibian capital, where Namibia is playing host to the inaugural Global African Hydrogen Summit. It's a massive deal. We're talking policy, we're talking economy, we're talking the legislative framework, we're talking jobs, and we have a number of engagements lined up for you as we prepare for the official opening of this inaugural Global African Hydrogen Summit. Now, the summit that kicked off yesterday will run until the 5th of September 2024. As far as Good Morning Namibia is concerned, until about 8 o'clock, we have a number of intriguing and interesting engagements lined up for you. Now, themed from ambition to action, fueling Africa's green industrialization revolution, the dynamic 3-day summit will convene heads of state, ministers, business leaders, project developers, investors, both existing and prospective, technologists and end users from across Africa and around the globe, to inter alia drive partnerships for and critical investments and financing into bankable green energy projects for strategic and national important matters across the continent. We're now joined for the first engagement by Mr. James Mnyupe. He's a presidential economic advisor, but also the country's Green Hydrogen Commissioner. Good morning, sir, and welcome to Good Morning Namibia.
Good morning. What an introduction, Denver. A real pleasure to be here. Sounds like you've told Namibia everything they need to know.
I'm sure Namibia is hungry for more. And what a time to be a Namibian. What a time to be an African. Why are we here?
We are here because Namibia, together with a lot of friends from around the world, are looking to chart a new way of how to build our economies, industrialize our ecosystems, and better serve actually humanity. And so we've all come together to exchange ideas on how we can do that. How do we, clean up our industrialization ecosystems? But importantly, how do we learn from each other? I think it's the one thing I'm most excited about. For the next 2 days, we've had these ambitions, as you've mentioned, since 2021. But today we hear from fellow African countries that have similar ambitions or even different ones. And then, of course, visitors from around the world. It's an absolute privilege to host them.
Thank you very much. I'm sure many Namibians also wants to know, how did we land this opportunity? Sure. What criteria did we as a country, did we as the land of the brave have to comply with to play host to the inaugural Global African Hydrogen Summit?
Yeah. Hey, when you say criteria, it sounds like we applied in a form somewhere. But essentially the world watched and the world picked. We did not come up with this concept, the Global African Hydrogen Summit. We were approached by pretty much people from around the world, and they said, look, we recognize Namibia as a particular thought leader on this issue, green hydrogen, green industrialization. We really admire the leadership that the government has sort of exhibited over the past few years. Would you not mind, or we think that Namibia would be a very interesting opportunity and platform to convene thought leaders from around the world on this particular issue. And so this was such a pleasure. We announced this particular intention at COP28, of course, another platform where the world comes together.
That's the Conference of the Parties.
The Conference of the Parties.
Held in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates.
This was in Dubai, and our Minister of Mines and Energy essentially was approached then, and we announced this. And so it's been an absolute privilege, because we didn't self-select. Countries, companies from around the world said, we want to come to Namibia. We've heard so much about Denver Kisting and his hospitality, and we would love to come and get a taste of that. Others would go visit projects after this summit. So people are intrigued by Namibia, and they want to come and meet us all, and we're excited to meet them too.
In pursuit of our own agenda relating to both sustainable development but also renewable energy, to what extent could this convention of thought leaders help shape our own agenda?
Without a doubt, I hope and expect it to shape how it is that we approach this opportunity. I mean, I think already over the past 2 days, we've had so many meetings with a range of topics, all the way from how do you meaningfully engage communities and civil society organizations, all the way to how do you craft a bankable market so that developers can actually mobilize the capital to build the infrastructure. And we will learn from so many. I mean, in Germany, I think yesterday there was a masterclass here where the H2 Global Foundation was articulating to Namibians how they created a market for a green ammonia to be made in Egypt, a fellow African country, and that particular market is willing to pay Egypt 1,000 euros a ton of green ammonia for it to be exported from Egypt to Germany, as an example. There are people here from Japan, there are people here from China, there are people here from the United States. And so I expect that as we learn from others, it will shape our own strategy, it will shape how our own business community represents the opportunity. And I hope and I expect that it will humble our leaders in terms of how we craft a strategy, perhaps more bottom-up, is something that we're also hearing. And so we're willing to listen and learn. And just humbled and privileged to be in the center of this emerging school of learning.
Speaking about curating and crafting a bankable market to erect the infrastructure necessary, it will require massive investment.
For sure.
And infrastructure development is no walk in the park.
Without a doubt.
Earlier this week during a Africa-Germany hydrogen engagement hosted by the University of Namibia, particularly the Green Hydrogen Research Institute, we heard that despite being excellent welders, we need to up our game in the art and science of welding if we are to erect the infrastructure necessary and needed for a project of this magnitude, of this scope.
Correct.
Talk to us about infrastructure development.
And you know, when we think about infrastructure in Namibia, I think sometimes we will quickly converge to the hard infrastructure, to the ports, the pipelines, the desalination plants, the transmission lines, the housing. But actually, infrastructure can be soft and hard. And just from a welding perspective, hydrogen pipelines have a very different characteristic and robust nature compared to just a normal water pipeline, for example. The hydrogen molecule is very small, and so it can easily, escape through a corroded pipeline. So when
Which we should avoid at all costs.
100%.
Yeah.
And so when you're welding a pipeline, a hydrogen pipeline, you need a very different skill set, or at least an advanced skill set to what we have. Is there an opportunity for you to upskill? Absolutely. You can upskill from a normal pipeline way, and those are the opportunities we want to bring home. But on the soft infrastructure side, let's think of policy. Let's think of standards and certifications. Our NSI, our Namibian Standards Institute, is leading us through a pathway where we're discovering what are all the ISO certifications or standards that we need to comply with as we manufacture our products, whether it's green iron or ammonia or other fuels, and so that we make them according to these ISO certifications. Think TC197 that'll measure the carbon content of hydrogen, so that when we trade it, others recognize the product as an authentic, genuine product. So the infrastructure we have to build is, yes, hard infrastructure, which requires capital mobilization. Importantly, Denver, I'm also learning it requires a community to give you permission to build that infrastructure, right? And on the other side, we require the NSI, but we also require researchers and students to talk to the NSI, both from Namibia and from abroad, in terms of what's needed. So what a dynamic ecosystem, but it is a choice we made not today, not in 2021, it is a choice we made in 2004, when we decided as a country that we wanted to become an industrialized nation. Industrialized nations are nations that trade. They're nations that form partnership. They're nations that form maritime corridors. And so we are trying our best to realize essentially the promise that we made to our people in Vision 2030 back in 2004. This is nothing new for us.
You just touched on an important part of the heart of the matter. We need consent. We need authorization from the community to erect the infrastructure. Why is the buy-in of the community non-negotiable?
Look, let us look at that fundamentally. Our people elect, for example, our government, right? That in itself is consent from a community to govern, to lead. In 2004, when we came up with Vision 2030, that concept was brought about by a government, a founding cabinet that got elected, right, by an independent Namibia. So in theory, we got permission there. But every 5-year cycles, you need to keep on getting permission to govern. we're about to go into such a cycle now, where this is an idea and a suggestion from government, from the world to the Namibian people. They need to accept it. In 2017, we amended our Nature Conservation Ordinance. It's a piece of legislation. How do we develop legislation in Namibia? Government comes up with, say, a policy, we write a bill, it goes to the people for consultation and approval, it goes to Parliament for the people's representative to approve. In that bill, it's very important, section 17(2)(k), very important, I think Namibians need to look at it. In section 17(2)(k) of the Nature Conservation Ordinance, the minister got permission from the people to look at the viability of erecting renewable energy assets in our national parks to combat climate change or to provide those national parks with electricity. We got that permission. We are merely trying to advance that permission, for example, to say, could we do that in the Tsauke? But we still have to renew that permission.
I wish we had the entire day to unpack these critically important matters.
That's
but we also certainly do not want to preempt the summit.
Of course.
Yeah,
of
we
course,
want to
of
listen
course,
to you
of
later
course.
today as well. We certainly want to listen to the acting president of the Republic of Namibia, Her Excellency Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwah, will officiate at the event. So as we wrap up our conversation this morning, briefly talk to us about the investment opportunities for Namibia that are present at this very summit.
At this very summit, and I don't want to preempt all the announcements. I mean, we can start with today at 3:30. We can end with the 5th of September at 5 o'clock. There will be lots of announcements from very interested investors who are saying, I've chosen Namibia as my home. This is my project. This is a new project that's coming. So there are investors here from around the world, some who are already invested in Namibia, others who want to come. Importantly, Denver, there will be investors here from Mauritania, from Morocco, from Kenya, who are deploying capital in similar industries. I don't want Namibia to just focus on whom can we attract. They should also listen, whom is invested in Africa? And what are they finding there? And how can we also give them something interesting here? So there will be capital deployers here from banks, original equipment manufacturers who want to build factories in Namibia, developers of projects, off-takers. All of them will be here. There are more than 700 delegates, and I hear more than 2,000 people are expected to pass through these halls. What an exciting time to be a Namibian. Let's listen. I think one of the big things for me as Namibia, we don't have to say it all for this summit. We can also listen, maybe twice as much as we speak. I'm very, very keen to learn, and I hope so are the Namibian people.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your service to the Namibian nation.
Denver, always a pleasure to be with you, and I look forward to more conversations. Thank you.
Mr. James Mnyupe is the Presidential Economic Advisor and the country's Green Hydrogen Commissioner, talking to us about the inaugural Global African Hydrogen Summit currently underway in the Namibian capital. We'll be back with more conversations after a brief break. Keep it locked here on NBC One or on the NBC Plus application.